Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This Honorable Superior Court for the County of Wyche is now convened and sitting for this special ceremonial session. The Honorable Judge Bryan Collins, present and presiding. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. God save this state and this honorable court.
Welcome to this special ceremonial session of the Wyche County Superior Court. I'm Bryan Collins, resident Superior Court Judge for Wyche County. The Wyche County Bar has a long tradition of gathering together in special ceremonial session to honor and celebrate the lives of our colleagues who have passed recently. Thank you for allowing us to do that. It means a lot to us, and we enjoy learning about your loved one and understanding their contributions to our legal system and to our community. And with that, I'll pass it on to our Master of Ceremonies.
My name is Russell Babb. I'm the president of the 10th Judicial District Bar. On behalf of the more than 6,000 members of the 10th, I want to thank each of you for joining us today. It's always difficult when we lose a colleague or a loved one, and it's our hope that this video will celebrate our colleagues' lives and remember them fondly.
Your Honor, Mr. President, members of the bar, friends, and family, a warm and heartfelt greetings to you all. My name is Bryan Oten, and along with Deontay Thomas, I serve as the co-chair to the Memorials Committee for the 10th Judicial District Bar. On behalf of the members of the committee, I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us for what will be a very special session of Superior Court. The Wyche County Bar is a special place. I hear people say this often, and I'm happy to say that I've observed it myself. There's a sense of community here in Wyche County, an undercurrent of respect and collegiality. And we've seen this play out over the past 18 months, where lawyers faced with new restrictions, stresses, and responsibilities in their personal and professional lives due to this pandemic have responded to each other not with anger and not with disregard for the person, but instead with kindness, flexibility, and grace. We've all had to adapt to this new world, and these special memorial sessions are no exception. These special sessions are one of the primary contributors to our community of lawyers. They are integral to the fabric of our bar. And although this session may look different than those past, it is critical that we continue in our efforts to stop and to remember the individuals that made a difference in this community and in our personal lives. I always walk away from these sessions feeling encouraged and inspired about our profession and our community. And I hope that is your experience today. To that end, I want to express our sincere thanks to the families of our honorees for allowing us as a local bar to recognize their loved ones in this manner. For those who have previously attended these special sessions, my words will sound familiar, but I do believe they bear repeating. Today, although we are not physically together, we are collectively joined in spirit for this unique and important opportunity. An opportunity to gather, not to mourn, but to remember some incredible members of our legal community, to honor their contributions to our profession, perhaps even to share a laugh with a funny memory or learn something new about someone that we've known for some time. And most importantly, to reflect upon and be inspired by the tremendous impact that these individuals had not only on our professional lives, but our personal lives as well.
My name is Coleman Cowan. I am Don Cowan's son. My dad's legal career spanned 43 years, from the jungles of Vietnam, where he served in the U.S. Army JAG Corps, to state and federal courtrooms across the United States. He was a highly sought-after lawyer, not only for his expertise across diverse areas of litigation, but also for his ability to master complex concepts of antitrust, intellectual property, and criminal law, and explain them to juries as if they were simple, straightforward, and intuitive ideas. My dad was a fellow, regent, and secretary of the American College of Trial Lawyers, and a former member of the American Bar Association House of Delegates. He was a past president of the North Carolina Bar Association and Legal Services of North Carolina. If you're watching this, you probably knew my dad, and you probably already know all of that. I want to tell you a story about what it was like to grow up under the shadow of my dad, Don Cowan. Growing up, he was just my dad. He coached my soccer teams, taught me how to drive, and introduced me to the Blues Brothers, the Eagles, and the raw power of a good rock and roll song. In our house, we didn't quote Bible verses. We quoted rock and roll lyrics. My dad was a constant source of encouragement in school, on the soccer field, and in life. He was my dad. I knew he was a lawyer, but it wasn't until I was 22 that I came to appreciate that he was no ordinary lawyer. In the fall of 1992, I began my first year of law school at Wake Forest. It was an experience I approached with much fear and trepidation. My plan for those 3 years was to put my head down, study hard, and do what I could to stay under the radar, hoping to make it to the other side intact. I thought of it like riding the subway in New York. Don't make eye contact or do anything to draw attention to yourself. That same year, my dad became the president-elect of the North Carolina Bar Association. His face and name were plastered on just about every legal publication across the state. He also knew and had worked with many of the deans and professors at Wake Forest. As I entered law school, I hoped none of them would make the connection that I was his son. First day, first class, torts. Dean J. Don Scarlett. Can anybody tell us the elements of a prima facie claim for battery and whether the plaintiff in Dickens v. Puryear satisfied his burden of proof? Mr. Cowan, please help us with that. Next class, property. Professor Pat Roberts. Who can explain whether the plaintiff in Honorees versus Della Marie had a valid claim of ownership? Mr. Cowan, please tell us your thoughts on that. Civil procedure. Who can explain for us the concept of personal jurisdiction and what the court's ruling in Pennoyer v. Neff tells us about the different types of personal jurisdiction? Mr. Cowan, please enlighten us on the Supreme Court's opinion. And so it went. That was my introduction to law school, and I knew then that I was fully in the shadow of Don Cowan. And because of who Don Cowan was, that meant I had a lot to live up to. But I realized that the creation of the shadow was as much my doing as his. My dad loved being a trial lawyer, so I became a trial lawyer. He was on the law review at Wake Forest, so I worked hard to get on the law review. My dad ran marathons, so I started running marathons too. At some point in my life, I realized I had become much like my father. But to me, that was a good thing. That meant I was doing things the right way. Throughout my life, my dad was my mentor, guide, and a hallmark of what was right and what was wrong. He was a constant presence in my life. He cast a long shadow. He taught me how to be a good student, a good lawyer, and a good person. That began with my dad coaching my soccer teams, and later as a vocal presence on the sidelines at my games. He didn't stand with the other parents. He stood by himself, far off to the side, at whichever end I was playing on. Through whatever noise there was on the field, I could always hear his voice in the stands. Hustle, win that ball, always followed after the game by what became his mantra and my indication that I was doing things right. Coleman, keep doing what you're doing. Throughout all the tension and stress of law school, and when I began to practice law, hearing those words from my dad, keep doing what you're doing, lifted whatever burden I was carrying and reassured me I was making the right choices. Soon after I graduated from law school, I was trying one of my first cases at the Wyche County Courthouse. It was a small personal injury case, but I had prepared for it like it was the Pentagon Papers trial, with the weight of the legal world resting on the outcome. There wasn't one piece of evidence or any contingency I had not mapped out in detail. Another lesson from my dad. As I stood up to begin my closing argument, I noticed someone slip into the back of the courtroom. It was my dad. he was still there, still on the sidelines, silently cheering me on. And I could hear his voice in my head. Keep doing what you're doing. During the course of his career, my dad received more awards and recognitions than I knew existed. One of my favorite quotes from him is something he once told a reporter. There are a lot of lawyers who have done this more than I have. Nothing I did was unusual. That couldn't be farther from the truth, but that quote says everything about my dad. One more lesson my dad knew well because he applied it to his life as I have applied it to mine. And our 11-year-old son Julian will recognize these words from both me and Poppy, as my dad was known to his grandchildren. It's a lesson which embodies all the hard work my dad put in to achieve everything he did over the course of his career. From the gospel according to the brothers Angus and Malcolm Young, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. I'm a better person because I am Don Cowan's son and because I grew up and lived in his shadow. He taught me right from wrong, both in his words and in his actions. I imagine he did the same for many of you. As North Carolina lawyers, we all live in the shadow of Don Cowan, and we are all better for it.
I met Hunter in the fall of 1979. I was a first-year law student. He was the third year. He was fun, funny, and engaging. At the time, I thought he was just trying to cheer up us 1Ls. Little did I know, Hunter was like that all the time. I also didn't know that in less than 10 years, we would be law partners, a role we shared for almost 2 decades. Hunter was the ideal partner in a law firm. He worked really hard, he was cheerful and engaging, and he really cared more about other people than he did himself. His service to the bar in our profession was really extraordinary. He was instrumental in the specialization program for bankruptcy, served that section in extraordinary fashion. The author Garrison Keller said that as we become adults, we lose that unbridled joy that children have. If you ask a room full of children if they can dance, they all enthusiastically raise their hands. If you do the same thing in a room full of adults, maybe a few will tentatively raise their hands, that's all. But Hunter would have raised his hands immediately and probably started dancing on the spot. We miss, but we remember our joyful, thoughtful, and caring member of the bar, Hunter, and our partner.
It's an honor and a treat to talk with you about my dear friend, Hunter Wyche. But it's also a bit daunting. I can't fully convey in just a few minutes what a great person, fine lawyer, and excellent friend Hunter was. But I'll touch on 3 things that come to mind as I think about him. First, Hunter had an uncanny ability to get to the point of something very complicated, and he did it with surgical precision. I remember one case we worked on together. We were 2 of 5 lawyers representing clients who faced some challenging issues. And I remember more than once some very talented and indeed brilliant lawyers discussing questions that demanded answers and often difficult choices. After lengthy discussions, when these very smart lawyers would lay out facts and issues, all making valid points necessary to a decision that was neither obvious nor direct, Hunter would chime in with a concise, often pithy summary of just a few words. He would lay out our options with crystal clarity, and more often than not, Hunter had the solution that we all readily accepted, and indeed seemed obvious after Hunter's incisive explanation. Hunter did that over and over again, demonstrating an insightfulness and, of course, intelligence for which we appreciated him. And I've learned from talking with others that he was much admired for that. I will say in only one sentence, conceding many, many more are required to give justice to the point, that Hunter was well known as a true scholar with great practical knowledge in his specialty, which was bankruptcy. The second point I'd like to make about Hunter is that he had a wonderful sense of humor. Not to take away from the depth and talent of Hunter's humor, but instead to honor it in a way that I'm capable of doing. I'll focus on his penchant for corny jokes by sharing just one. Why did the skeleton not go to his prom? He had no body to dance with. Hunter loved corny jokes. He collected them. He actually had a folder that was a couple of inches thick of jokes he had collected over the years. Although I can't adequately convey how keen Hunter's sense of humor was, I can tell you it was natural, spontaneous, and quick. I remember once he was on the phone with a call center for a big company. It was the all too familiar situation we've all experienced when we can't get anywhere with a so-called customer service representative. The company was Bass Pro Shops. After getting nowhere and being rightly exasperated, Hunter exclaimed, "You're all a bunch of amateurs." "That's what I'm going to call you from now on, Bass Amateur Shops." Finally, I want to talk about Hunter's grace. He lost an eye due to cancer, and he wore an eye patch for the last 10 or 11 years of his life. But he didn't let that slow him down. He was active, productive, and always gregarious. And rather than being negative, I never saw him complain about losing an eye. Hunter used his humor to make those around him comfortable. He loved being on the water on his boat and would say, "I finally am a pirate now." And I've heard Hunter say, sometimes quite strategically, "It only takes one eye to see it clearly. I'm keeping my one eye on you." And he would joke often in emails about looking something up on his iPad. That's EYE pad. At a surprise birthday party for Hunter one year, we all wore eye patches. Hunter loved it. Thank you, Hunter, for your intellect, humor, and grace. You are an example and an inspiration.
My name is Beth Heath, and I'm the Chief District Court Judge in the 8th Judicial District. That's Wayne, Lenoir, and Greene counties. I first met Paul Rodgman when I was a paralegal. I worked in a law firm that merged with the one he worked in. The firm became Wallace, Morris, Barwick, and Rochelle. Later, I attended law school, but came back to Wallace Morris. I eventually became a partner there before becoming a judge. Paul was a trial lawyer through and through, mostly civil superior court jury work. I learned a lot from Paul about how to prepare for cases, how to organize information, and how to present your case for trial. He was organized, he worked hard, but Paul was successful in his practice. Paul was not all business though. He was a lot of fun. Paul loved to have a good time. He loved his family and his children. He was very proud of them and talked about them all the time. He loved hanging out with family and friends around his pool and listening to music. That man loved music, rock and roll. He had the biggest album and CD collection of anyone I have ever known. Paul was extremely intelligent. He could be tough, but he never expected more from others than he did from himself. He really was a great mentor.
Well, I really appreciate the time that Paul took with me to work with me in the legal profession, and I feel like that he has shaped me into the lawyer and the judge that I am today, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Paul is definitely a mentor for both of us, and we really appreciate being able to be part of his life and him being able to be part of ours, and appreciate his part in helping us get to where we are.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Burke, and I'm the daughter of Frederick A. Burke, Esquire. My father had over 45 years of active practice as an attorney, licensed in New York, Ohio, Tennessee, the United States Supreme Court, 5 U.S. District Courts, and North Carolina, where he found his home to raise 5 children and 8 grandchildren. He was active in all our lives and taught me the joy of successful diligence. When others questioned the ability to resolve a daunting issue, he kicked ass and proved all the naysayers wrong. I passed the North Carolina bar exam. My father brought me into his law practice to glean firsthand experience from an unwavering and unyielding attorney, teaching me his relentless desire for solutions rather than excuses for failures. My father dedicated his life to ensure happiness and prosperity to his 5 children, of which I am the oldest. My 4 children were a joy to him. My son Jimmy is an FBI agent. My daughters Kristen and Candace risk their health and safety by working steadfastly at both Rex and Wyche hospitals during the COVID pandemic, when so many around them lost their lives. And my younger daughter Courtney exemplifies his devotion to detail as a dental assistant, bringing happiness into the lives of others. My father never witnessed my acceptance to the North Carolina bar. But one day, his vision will come to fruition, and once again, a Burke will proudly be a member of the North Carolina bar. My father raised his children to never quit, to fulfill their dreams as he did, and for the generations to follow him to acquire the same dedication to help others achieve the happiness and joy he always brought into the world. The accomplishments of my father rightfully earned him the respect and esteem due to a person dedicating his life to a 45-year career as an attorney and a lifetime as the patriarch of this proud family. Thank you for your time and consideration of my father's life.
That concludes our program. Thank you to all of our presenters for their thoughtful words and shared memories. I want to thank all of the members of the Memorial Committee, as well as our videographer, Bryan Miller of Frontrunner Productions. And a very special and significant thank you goes to the staff of the Wyche County Bar and 10th Judicial District. Without their incredible efforts, this excellent presentation would not have been possible. Thank you to Judge Bryan Collins for presiding over this session. And lastly, I extend a most sincere thanks to you all for joining us for this special session.
All right, that ends our celebration. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to the 10th Judicial District Bar, especially the Memorials Committee of the 10th Judicial District Bar for putting this together. Thank you to all the participants, to the folks who gave the tributes. Thank you for letting us honor your loved ones. It's a very important thing that we do. And with that, this ceremonial session of the Wyche County Superior Court stands adjourned, sine die.